Hi, this is Brooks, and welcome back to Breakthru Chinese. Today's program is the third in a series where we discuss key concepts that have shaped our approach to teaching Chinese. In the 10 years that we've been working on this project, we've observed that Chinese has several unique characteristics that set it apart from almost every other major language. And these characteristics really do have an impact on how we approach working with our students. Just to recap, Chinese is really three distinct language systems. Chinese is a visual language, and homophones are a big deal in Chinese. Today's program covers the third of these concepts, that homophones are far more prevalent in Chinese than they are in English. This impacts students in several ways. It's really difficult to understand spoken Chinese, and that limits our ability to learn Chinese phonetically. Because of the prevalence of homophones, we need to correlate what we hear to characters, not pinyin syllables. Conversely, pronunciation has to be even more precise than in English if we're going to be understood. And finally, we also need a precise understanding of pinyin so that we can use input method editors, or IMEs, to enter Chinese phonetically into computers and smartphones. There are only 412 unique pinyin combinations in modern Mandarin. Ba, Bo, Fang, and Feng are examples of pinyin combinations. But even with tones added to provide further differentiation, that still only yields about 1,600 unique combinations. That means that, on average, there are still about 5 characters per combination, which means there are many exact homophones in Chinese. But as it turns out, homophones aren't distributed evenly. Here's a rather glaring example of homophones. Here are 4 lists, each with 10 characters, and in each list, all the characters are pronounced sh with the 4th tone. In all, the sound sh with the 4th tone has more than 40 characters that have exactly the same pronunciation, yet each have fundamentally different meanings. In addition, Chinese has many near homophones, meaning that many combinations have similar initials and/or finals. The most important of these include zh, ch, sh, z, c, s, zh, zh, ch, ch. Despite the pinyin spelling that may appear to be familiar to English speakers, pronouncing these near homophones correctly is a bit more challenging than you might expect. The combination of identical pinyin spelling, tones, and near homophones can be one of the biggest challenges faced by students. So when students comment that Chinese all sounds the same, it's largely true. And because English is an inflective, not a tonal language, most students don't have a natural talent for recognizing different tones. To the Western ear, tone differences are very, very subtle. But to the Chinese ear, incorrect or no tones are completely incomprehensible. Because of the prevalence of homophones, precise pronunciation is critical for listening comprehension, learning characters, and using IMEs. And for a variety of reasons, we tend to be pronunciation tolerant in the US and can understand foreigners who may not pronounce English with 100% accuracy. But if your goal includes communicating with native Chinese speakers, especially in China, you'll discover that Chinese requires precise pronunciation to communicate effectively. Students who have successfully completed courses in the US but have not mastered standard Mandarin pronunciation may not be able to communicate as well in China. It's worth noting that the PRC has established precise standards for pronunciation, ranked on a scale of 1, lowest, to 6, highest. In fact, native Chinese speakers will often comment that someone who has mastered pronunciation speaks very standard Chinese. Perhaps because of time constraints in large group classes, teachers in the US may not pay a lot of attention to pronunciation and tones. It takes a lot of work to get it right. Perhaps the most overlooked reason for mastering pronunciation is that Chinese is entered phonetically when using smartphones and computers. Whether you're texting your friends on Weixin or writing ad copy for your first job in China, you'll need an IME to use Chinese with any digital device. In this example, let's use the sentence, "I'm very honest." When entering the sentence in English, if there's a typo, the intent of the sentence is still evident. When we enter the Chinese version of this sentence, 我很诚实, a lot depends on how well we enter the phonetic representation, or pinyin, as well as the characters we select. Both have to be correct. In the first Chinese example, we've entered the pinyin correctly, and we've selected the correct Chinese characters. But in the second Chinese example, even though we've entered the pinyin correctly, because of homophones, we can still choose characters that sound the same as 我很诚实, yet have an entirely different meaning. In this case, the sentence now reads, Crouch Fierce City. And in the third example, we've misspelled the pinyin slightly, and now the result is even further from the original intent and reads, not very try. So you can see that, unlike English, it's quite easy to stray from the original intent just by making one or two typos. Because of the way that IMEs work, where the phonetic representation of a character is entered, and the character is selected from a list of candidates that have the exact same pinyin, even if the pinyin is 100% correct, you can still choose the wrong character. But if we misspell the pinyin for a Chinese character, then we can very easily enter a completely wrong character. In fact, one of the biggest challenges that I had when I first started using IMEs was that I inadvertently made huge errors just by entering the wrong pinyin. So to recap, because of homophones, it's a bit difficult to understand spoken Chinese, and that limits our ability to learn Chinese phonetically. And because of the prevalence of homophones, we need to correlate what we hear to characters, not pinyin syllables. Conversely, pronunciation has to be even more precise than in English if we're going to be understood. And finally, we need precise understanding of pinyin so that we can use input method editors to enter Chinese phonetically into computers and smartphones. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks for joining me, and I hope this session's been helpful. 再见.